Hey guys, welcome to a special edition of Modern Day Debate in which I've taken over the show from James. And today we're debating who has more sex appeal. Is it Kyle or Steve? We're going to have that debate right now. All right, guys. So welcome to this special edition of Modern Day Debate in which I have stolen the show from James and forced him into one of the debater seats. And today we are going to be debating the hosts of NonSequitur Show. Which one has the more sex appeal? Is it Kyle or is it Steve? And today we're going to be finding out. Today we have James and Jim. James of Modern Day Debate and Jim Majors debating this very emotional, very, very controversial topic. So let's get this going right now. So for today's debate, the format will go as follows. We'll be having 5-minute openings, 5-minute rebuttals, 5-minute cross-examinations, 4-minute closings, and then a 10-minute Q&A. God help us if we can fit it into that amount of time. But right now, we're going to be starting with Jim. All right, are you ready to start your opening statements, Jim?
Yes, I am. Thank you so much for moderating. And before we get started, thank you to James for coming to me with this important issue. And we'll look forward to discussing this with you.
All right, so let's get ready. And James, do you want to give yourself a little intro? I don't think anybody here knows who you are.
I'd be happy to. This is basically, long story short, we love debates, and this is my favorite debate as it's something I've been just on edge for months.
Excellent. So with Jim, I'm going to be starting your timer right now.
Okay, awesome. Okay, so I have a presentation. I'm going to go and share that right now. It's okay, right?
Oh, yeah. Or you have it. Okay, let's do it.
Okay, cool. Okay, so here we go. I mean, the title basically says it all here. Let's see. When James told me of his position, I was just confused. You know, how can he think that Steve has more sex appeal than Kyle? As confused as I was, I said, okay, let's go ahead and do this. And I had to challenge him on it because Kyle Curtis is, without a question, the sexiest man on YouTube. The topic of debate tonight is over sex appeal. My opponent will tell you that Steve is intelligent, happy, and maybe even say that he's friendly, though that could be a debate in itself. But none of that is sex appeal. So what is sex appeal? Before the debate, I wanted to get a solid definition of what sex appeal is, so I turned to the dictionary. Scanning through it, through the S's, I found it. And lo and behold, under the definition of sex appeal was this: a picture of Kyle Curtis. Not surprising, of course. Kyle is sexy, period. This is obvious enough. I don't know why my opponent chooses to maintain his position given the vast amount of evidence in favor of my argument today. When you think sexy, you don't think Pope, do you? Then why would anyone think the Pope of agnosticism has more sex appeal than me, Kyle, the creator and co-host of the NonSequitur Show? He's had some of the biggest PhDs, STEM-filled scholars, media personalities, and business professionals. Oh, Steve is there too. Born in July 18th, this summer baby is a stunner baby. As seen in the evidence here, Kyle clearly oozes confidence, swagger, wit, and no small amount of intelligence. Most importantly, though, as I just demonstrated, Kyle defines sex appeal. It should go without saying that Kyle has more sex appeal than a Jason Momoa, Jason Statham hybrid. Yet my opponent insists that Steve McRae, a Don Knotts Gandalf hybrid, somehow beats Kyle Curtis. Kyle Curtis was an executive chef in the past, proving time and time again to be not only an amazing cook, but an amazing co-worker. Everybody at DJ Sky Lounge wanted to sex him up, but Kyle, being professional and classy, didn't succumb. I challenged my opponent to prove Steve would have been able to do the same. Not only would he not have the control and swagger that Kyle does, but he also lacks the cuisine. Oh yeah, did I mention that Steve McRae microwaves chicken? I mean, do you think that's sex appeal? I certainly don't. Salmonella City, population? Not Kyle Curtis. Kyle is an animal lover. How many pictures does Steve have with animals? None. One can reasonably assume then that Steve McRae kicks puppies. Not sexually appealing at all. While the years have been unkind to Sailor Steve, Kyle continues to age like a Greek god. And he looks like one too. I challenge my opponent to show me a picture of Mr. McRae in his peak form. Will it beat this? I think not. Kyle pumps iron and stays in shape, molding himself into a model of sexiness, undeniable to all that see him, but those who are too blind to see. Clearly, and unfortunately, one of those people are my opponent. Steve McRae's physical peak was in 1981, where he took third place in the Amateur Bodybuilders of America convention. Kyle is a family man. Here we see the love shown for his mom, grandmother, and other members of his family. Steve, however, takes family photos with cardboard cutouts of DC comic characters. This is verifiable. Kyle loves Halloween. Nothing is sexier than that. I don't believe I have to expound upon this point. Kyle knows how to party, and he can fill a room with hottest honeys in North Carolina. While you wouldn't want anyone but him, sometimes he's just too tired. But that doesn't stop him from being an awesome wingman. Probably the best. To conclude, I purposely tried to find photos of Kyle looking ugly. Couldn't find one. Not a single one. I challenge my opponent to do the same. I'm willing to bet my opponent resorts to dishonest tactics like Photoshop to back up his position. I suppose we'll see. If you're watching, Kyle, in case you forgot to remind yourself this morning, your butt is perfect, your smile lights up the room, your mind is insanely cool, you are way more than enough, and you are doing an amazing job at live. And with that, I turn my time over to my opponent.
That was perfect timing there, Jim. All right. Well, I see that this is getting off to a controversial start already. James, are you prepared?
Yes, I am. I am very excited for this debate. Once, Jim, if you're able to minimize from full screen, or hold on one second. Yeah, if you're able to minimize from full screen, I will pull up my own PowerPoint.
Sorry about that. Just looking for the button.
That's okay. So, starting the clock now, first I want to say thank you very much for having me. It's been a while since I've been able to debate. And thanks for the collaboration with the NonSequitur Show, as I have been a huge fan of their debates for a long time. And here at Modern Day Debate, we have got to say, I at least have a bias. And my bias is for the sexiest man on YouTube. So, let me just pull up my PowerPoint really quick. This basically is my presentation with regards to why Steve is in fact the sexiest man on YouTube. So, my title is called Steve McSexy, the man with the most sex appeal. And with that, I want to introduce all of you to my overview for my presentation. Main reasons why Steve has the most sex appeal. 1, Steve is the ultimate alpha. 2, Steve is the ultimate Chad. 3, Steve McRae does not pay for sex. Sex pays for Steve McRae. And 4, Steve McRae doesn't try to be sexy. Sexy tries to be Steve McRae. So, leading off, you might be thinking I'm talking about Stephen McRae, the Australian ballet dancer. But you are wrong. I'm talking about the host of the NonSequitur Show and the great debate community. The man that has women chasing after him 24/7. He's been known as the Prince of Logic Guard, depicted as people like Thor, Iron Man, and Gandalf. He's also known as the Fabio of philosophy. So when you see Steve on the streets, you can know that Fabio lives on through Steve in philosophy. Steve is the only man who's ever been able to make a Civil War general costume look sexy, as Elysius S. Steve. And the only man whose mullet has ever rivaled the mullet of Uncle Jesse from Full House. That's Steve in 1985. Sexy. Steve, number 2, is the ultimate Chad. And this is the second most important reason why Steve is the most sexy man on YouTube. For instance, this is just a little story, an anecdote to support my case. One time a man claimed that he lost to Steve in 2 debates. But obviously we knew it was a lie because nobody survives their first debate with Steve. Steve is a tsunami of swagger, also known as the Sultan of Swag. Known for being able to lift a chair with one hand while he's sitting in it. Not only that, but over 10 times People Magazine's Sexiest Man of the Year, Steve McRae, continues to sizzle. And I would add, not only that, but if you've seen Steve's logical proofs on behalf of atheism as meaning the denial of theism, you'd be blown away. That's because he's the bad argument devouring tornado of sex appeal. And the bad boy of YouTube, where Steve's personal debate philosophy is clothing optional. So that's my opening statement for why Steve, in fact, is the sexiest man on YouTube. Thank you.
All right, well, welcome back to Modern Day Debate. I'm already getting a little hot under the collar here, but I'm ready for some 5-minute rebuttals. So, Jim, do you have a rebuttal for that strong opening statement from James?
Yeah. You can go and start.
Starting.
Okay. Yeah. So I mean, my opponent made a lot of claims, that I really would have to see evidence for, and a lot of these claims, I mean, he doesn't. He's kind of taking them out of context. For example, when he says that women chase Steve, that only happens in 2 cases. One, they're trying to get their purse back from him. And 2, you could say, I guess, that women chase Steve if you think that the ones that are running from him eventually, as they're going around the earth a little bit faster than he is, because he is so out of shape that they would eventually catch up to him. So yes, I guess you would say that women do chase Steve. And my opponent uses circular logic, saying things like Steve doesn't try to be sexy. Sexy tries to be Steve. If sexy tries to be Steve, then what is sexy? I would ask my opponent to respond with his standards of sexiness and what sexiness is. And again, a bunch of baseless claims like being able to lift a chair with one hand while he's sitting in it defies logic. I mean, it defies physics. So I mean, that's a very, very extravagant claim. No verifiable evidence at all. And he compares Steve to the Civil War general Ulysses S. Grant. And while yes, he appears to be a good guy, we cannot forget that his father-in-law did in fact give him a slave. How much time do I have left?
You got like 3 minutes.
3 minutes. I mean, there's just so much wrong with that. I mean, there was no evidence of Steve being able to cook, being around people, about friends or anything like that. In fact, I had a hard time finding pictures of Kyle alone because he is such a good person. People want to be around him. So even when he's taking selfies, he's taking pictures of other people. It's really quite an amazing thing. So I mean, there's a lot for my opponent to respond to. So I guess I'll give him my remaining minute, and I can add it to his time if he needs it. With that, I surrender the rest of my time. Thank you.
Cool. So, James, are you ready for your rebuttal?
I am.
All right, starting the timer now.
Thank you very much. So I've got a lot of points to lay on Jimmy Majors. First is, true, Kyle does have styled hair. Kyle dresses well. But did you ever notice Kyle appears to dress especially well when Steve is wearing his sexy Christmas sweater? By that I mean it looks like Kyle is clearly trying to compensate. I'm sorry. The truth hurts. So basically, when Steve wears one of his sexy Christmas sweaters, or when Steve gets attention from ladies in the live chat, like women who are like, hugs, Steve, kisses, all that stuff, basically you see Kyle trying to step up his game, trying to compete. Obvious answer. Second of all, Jim says that Steve basically has like women running away from him. I can't remember the exact words, but what I do remember is this: the last time Steve went to a feminist conference, he came back with his shirt ironed and a sandwich. Number 3, Steve, not only being the ultimate Chad and alpha, but I would also point out, does Kyle play an instrument? I didn't think so. But Steve plays his guitar, which women and pretty much anybody on the planet considers a major aphrodisiac. So with that, I yield the rest of my time because it's so obvious Steve is oozing with sex appeal.
Whoa. All right, so let's get into the cross-examinations. And I think that we can handle this with just kind of doing a little bit of back and forth. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to toss it to Jim. Go ahead and start popping off some questions to our dear friend James. Jim?
Sure. James, do you have any evidence for your claims of things like Steve defining sexy? I mean, I guess my question to you would be, what do you define sex appeal as? Like, what are your standards?
If this is some sort of Euthyphro dilemma ploy, Jim, I'm charmed that you're going in that direction. But the obvious answer is Steve's essence holds sexiness itself. It's you could say synonymous with it.
Well, what do you mean by his essence?
His Steve-ness is sexiness itself. It's the ultimate standard.
So Steve is the standard of sexiness then?
That's right.
Okay. All right then. That's really strange. What do you think about the fact that Merriam-Webster has a picture of Kyle under sex appeal?
First of all, that's because Merriam-Webster hasn't seen Steve McRae yet. Second of all, I'll admit, Kyle's got sex appeal, especially when he's trying to compensate for the fact that Steve outdoes him every night.
Well, I would highly doubt that, and again, I would have to have evidence for that. What? Wow. I mean, this is all just amazes me that you would think this. Have you ever seen a meal cooked by Steve McRae?
Yes, I have. He cooked a frozen chicken on his body because he's so sizzling hot.
Okay, well, do you realize how hot you would have to be to cook chicken on your body?
That's how hot Steve is, Jim. 298 degrees on the skin surface.
That is quite hot. So all the times that you described Steve using his sexiness, it was always using some other outside help. Like it seemed like he always needed some assistance in being sexy, whereas Kyle does it quite naturally. In fact, I actually showed a picture of Kyle in his most natural form, and I would urge you to find the same for your claim.
You're asking for me to show a picture of Steve naked? Is that what you're asking for?
Well, just natural is what I'm saying. I mean, do you disagree that Steve looks like a hybrid of Don Knotts and Gandalf?
No, Steve looks like Gandalf's hotter brother, Steve Golf, okay? That's what he looks like. So
Steve Golf. Well, there's a reason that they did not put him in the Lord of the Rings.
right, because it would basically distract from the entire story because of Steve's wild sex appeal.
Oh, I don't know if that's it at all, but I guess that he could be in it because after all, the hobbits would have to have something to run from in the beginning.
I'm sorry, is this a cross-examination? Are you not supposed to be asking me questions?
I mean, you know, I'm just I'm just really amazed that you think this is even a debatable topic. Now, I mean, I could understand if you said something like, who has more sex appeal, Ocean or Kyle, because they're both sexy gentlemen. Not trying to get any points from the moderator, but
You get 12.
but this, I mean, this is just wild. It's like debating, which is better, a hamburger or a cardboard sandwich. It's just it's crazy to me.
Well,
And I really honestly thought you were a logical person, James. So I mean, I am a little disappointed, to be honest.
first of all, if you're trying to say that Kyle is basically the equivalent of a hamburger, and Steve is a cardboard sandwich, maybe a cardboard sandwich stuffed full of lobster and steak, that might make sense, minus the cardboard. But unfortunately, go ahead.
Well, I mean, no, that's awful. I'm in Oklahoma, so I guess if somebody were to mail me that sandwich, maybe by the time it got here, that would represent the sex appeal of Steve.
If sex appeal grew like a bacteria, that would be true.
Yes, and it also repels just as well,
No,
men and women alike.
it's not the form of a question. Moderator, I'm sorry, but he is making his own
I know.
statements.
So, Jim, I got to ask you to stick to some questions.
Okay, questions. Sorry.
Or else we're going to have to throw you out of the ring, son.
Sorry. Okay. Does Steve work out?
Yes.
Does Steve have a six-pack?
Steve has a 12-pack.
Is there verifiable evidence for this?
I don't have the picture right now, but given that photo,
I will verify that I have seen some pictures of Steve with a 12-pack.
the photo
Okay.
that everybody saw of Kyle naked in his bed, Jim has been accusing me of photoshopping. Jim photoshopped Kyle's head on top of Steve's head. That was Steve.
I absolutely did not. That was taken in a candid situation that I do not need to reveal on air. But anyways, they're my questions.
All right,
You want to
with
ask
that,
your question time?
that will be our time. So now I'm going to be switching it over. Now James will be asking questions of Jim about the sheer sexiness of Steve McRae. Let's hear it.
Thank you very much, Ocean. I appreciate that. Jim, first question. On a scale of 9 to 10, how sexy is Steve McRae?
9. I mean a 0.9. Sorry.
Does Kyle happen to play an instrument which, by the way, in many cultures is considered an aphrodisiac?
Yes, he is quite talented on the skin flute.
Does Kyle have any sort of movie characters he resembles, such as Gandalf, Thor, or Iron Man?
No, he actually has some. The good-looking ones resemble Kyle. Actually, Kyle is just an amalgamation of the most beautiful men on Earth. As a matter of fact, geneticists have actually tested Kyle and come to find out he has this gene that is only expressed in a limited amount of people, 0.01% of the population. Kyle and one other person in the I believe it's in the Andes, really secluded, express this gene, and it's pure sexiness.
Do you think sexiness is something that can be learned?
No, it cannot be learned. It is something that is evolved and expressed. Just like I said, it's a genetic expression.
Do you think that a person born with sexiness, such as Kyle, do you think that sex appeal grows over time, on average?
No, I do not. I believe that it is expressed at the same amount from the time that you are born until the time that you die. In fact, if you look at in history, and when you look at people who are born with the sexiness gene, they are beautiful babies and they're beautiful people. If you look at Steve's baby picture, Steve was an ugly baby, and while some ugly babies do grow up to be beautiful, those still do not have the sexiness gene.
As a general rule, is it not true that babies with their disproportionately huge heads and eyes look like aliens?
Yes, Steve did look like an alien as a baby.
Did Kyle look like an alien as a baby?
If by alien you mean a god not of this world, then absolutely.
Is this okay? And do you mean a god out of this world, as in a monster from Mars?
No, absolutely not. I mean a divine being that perhaps were made in his image, and it is just so magnificent to see that we cannot look on it with our human eyes.
If Kyle is as much of a Chad as Steve is, why is he not Pope of anything?
That's the thing, though. He is not a Chad. Chad tries to be Steve, and Chad is one of those people who were born as an ugly baby and became a beautiful human, but they do not express the sexiness gene.
I think, given how bad that answer was, I will yield the rest of my cross-examination time.
Fair enough, fair enough. Now we shall move on to the closing statements on this debate that's got me a little bit bothered. So, right now we're going to move on to Jim. Jim, are you ready for your closing statement in defense
Yes, I
of
am.
the illustrious Kyle Curtis?
Yes.
All right. I am starting the timer now.
Okay, again, I just want to point out that my opponent did not back up any of the claims that he made. He just said that he could provide verifiable evidence for these things that violate the laws of physics. Now, I would be very interested to see him defend those. And I mean, saying things like Steve has a 12-pack. And Ocean, I know that you've seen it as well, but it's perhaps that Steve has modifications to his body that were made sometime after he was born, because in order to express the sexiness gene, you do have to be a human. You do have to be biologically symmetrical and perfect, which Kyle Curtis is. While yes, a 12-pack is possibly symmetrical, it is not biologically pure, and therefore, that is evidence to me that Steve obviously has some modification going on there, like his hair and his beard. I've seen pictures of him from when he was younger, and he had zero facial hair, zero gray hair. So I mean, it's clear that Steve, everything that you find sexy about Steve is just is after the fact. And I would challenge you to test him, take him to a geneticist, and have him tested. Have him DNA tested for the sexiness gene and see if he expresses it. And I will guarantee you that he does not. Again, because I have seen his baby pictures. In conclusion, I honestly think this is just a cut and dry debate. I don't think that there's really any argument here. And I'm looking forward to the Q&A session. And with that, I surrender the rest of my time.
All right. So now we shall move on to James. James, are you ready for your closing statement?
I am.
All right. I am starting the timer now.
Thank you. And with that, I like Kyle a lot. We've got a good relationship. He's my boy. But here's the problem. I didn't want to bring this up, Jim, but I'm going to have to bring it up. Kyle, terrific moderator. Steve, terrific moderator. Both very alpha in that way. But Steve, epic debater. Kyle, rarely debates. Maybe he's good, but Steve is very alpha, very Chad-like, in that Steve cannot get enough of those debates. So, one thing to consider is Steve constantly in the mood for those debates where his philosophy is clothing optional. Second of all, I've already mentioned the fact that Steve has been depicted as Gandalf, as well as Thor, as well as Iron Man. Again, Kyle, not depicted as any of those heroes. You never named any. Last, and certainly not least, Steve is such a Chad that Steve's tears cure cancer. but too bad he's never cried. So with that, I want to yield the rest of my time to the Q&A because I'm sick of beating up on Jim. Thank you very much.
All right, so with that, we're going to move on to the Q&A, and I have a long list of questions, and this has been interesting, to say the least, and I'm going to have to, change after this. So, Darth Calculus has a question for both sides. Which would you marry, and which would you date? We can start with you, Jim.
I would marry Kyle, of course, and I would take Steve on a date in the woods and come back alone.
James?
I think it's very obvious. You can go on a date with you can go on a date with Kyle. It'll probably be a good time. Kyle's a charmer, no doubt about it. He's a smart guy. He's a bold guy. But when it comes to the person that you're going to want to roll over, and this is theoretically, this is not me personally, I'm just saying on objective grounds, if you want to wake up one day 50 years from now and roll over and see somebody lying next to you, you want it to be Steve McRae.
What?
You know it, I know it, everybody knows it.
So that question was from Darth Calculus. And this another one from Darth Calculus is question for James. Please defend Steve's facial hair choices.
Absolutely. In fact, Steve's facial hair choices are not his weakness, they're his strength. Here's why. One, not only does Steve have that unusually sexy beard with sex appeal oozing out of it that women constantly try to run their hands through, but I've been told that Steve has used his beard to tie up a robber after a bank robbery. It doesn't get any more alpha than that.
And all right, we got a question from SJ.
Ties him up on the bed.
What?
Ties him up on the bed.
SJ asks, do you think men and women define sex appeal in the same way? Question for both, I imagine.
Go ahead, Jim.
I'm sorry, what was the question?
Do you think that men and women define sex appeal in the same way?
Yes, of course.
James?
I think that on an objective level, evolutionary psychology here, there are features, this is science, it's empirically backed, there are features that both sexes consider attractive. So for example, prominent eyes, a not too large nose, not too big of a chin. Sound familiar? Sounds like Steve McRae. Also, they tend to prefer people who wear Christmas sweaters that look super sexy, just like Steve.
Nobody has ever said that in the history of ever.
This is a question for Jim. This is from Utopia Buster. Why does Steve obviously have the advantage?
Steve, the only arena that Steve has an advantage in is the arena of philosophy. And if you look at philosophers historically, you won't see any pictures of them, but rather carvings of rocks, because that's not only their skin complexion, but about as generous as you can be.
And question for both. How many ladies does each guy attract? James?
I think when it comes to Kyle, like I said, the guy's bold, the guy is intelligent. I'll give him a lot. Like, maybe in the hundreds. It's possible. I mean, we're not talking like Jimmy Majors, like in the single digits. We're giving him some street cred, so Kyle would maybe be in the hundreds.
You're right. Compared to Kyle, I am in the single digits.
But when it comes to Steve, not only does Steve trump Jimmy Majors, which is obvious, but he also trumps Kyle, namely 6-digit figures. In other words,
yes, but that is 5 of those digits are after a decimal.
No, not at all. In fact,
Oh, no,
I've already
you're right.
shown it.
You're right. I'm sorry. All 6 are.
Listen, I hate to do this to you, Jim. I know it's really unfair, but I've already shown this and everybody really enjoyed it because basically, I don't know if I told anybody the context of this picture, what I introduced Steve, but the important thing here is if you look at this picture, this is just an average day for Steve walking to his studio to start the Non-Sequitur Show. This wasn't like, oh, it was the summer where there were a lot of people getting married. This is just Steve leaving his house every day. So we're talking thousands.
All right.
Yes.
So, Jim,
Yeah,
how many ladies does each guy attract from your perspective?
well, I mean, first of all, okay, this is Steve who has a real problem. He has a serious problem. In fact, one of his favorite things to do is crash weddings. And what he's not showing here is the context in which it was actually many women who were chasing him. And they were chasing him because he was trying to ruin their wedding. And that's just something that he likes to do. So that's the only common denominator there. If you notice, everybody is a bride. There is nobody there who's not wearing a wedding dress. So that's what happened.
All right. So, we have a question. Is there an ontological nature to the sexiness that is the ontological nature? And sorry, Brian Stevens. Is there an ontological nature to the sexiness? And is that ontological nature Steve McRae or Kyle Curtis?
No, there's no ontological source. Like I said, it's genetic. Either you have it or you don't, and it's testable. And I mean, we can easily solve that debate. I can provide evidence that Kyle expresses the sexiness gene. And I urge my opponent to get the same test done on his Steve.
James?
I do have an answer. Two things to consider. One, I've already given an answer, and I'll stay consistent. Steve is the ontological basis for sexiness, for its essence of sex appeal. And you might say, oh, wait, it's like, oh, ontological, you're going to root it in Steve, a man who at one point, let's say back in the year 1900, theoretically, Steve didn't exist. And you might say, does that mean that sex appeal didn't exist? No, people always want some sort of abstract, platonic type of stopping point for things like sex appeal. But the truth is, it can be just as real, even if it's instantiated in a physical being. So, for example, you've probably seen that sweet meme as of late, where the person's like, I don't believe in love. In the meme, that's Jim. And they're like, I don't believe in love. And then the other person, me, kicks them in the balls. And then I'm like, oh, if you don't believe in love because you think it's a chemical reaction, well, guess what? Your pain is just a chemical reaction too. Do you believe that exists? Ipso facto, yes. Steve is the embodiment of sexiness.
But
Right.
there are a lot of different sources for those releases of endorphins and chemicals. Some of them are similar to the chemicals released as a result of the sexiness gene being expressed. But there are other qualities that are also expressed that aren't anywhere near the same. So I mean, you're not really providing all the evidence there. You're not providing it in its full context.
We don't have a lot of time left, so I'm going to
All
just
right.
let Jim's stupid comment pass for now.
All right. So we have another one from Darth Calculus. Question for Jim. Would you accept the nomination for runner-up in sex appeal?
I mean, yeah, I would be certainly humbled to be considered second to Kyle, but I suppose I would, yeah.
And another one from S.J. Thomason. Do women care about the physical as much as men do, or are they more focused on competence, intelligence, and power? James?
I would love to answer that. First, sounds like she's maybe referring to Jordan Peterson, that women do indeed like competence. And I know that all you JP, Jordan Peterson haters out there hate hearing it. But it's true, and it's what makes Steve so sexy. He can do it all. He debates, he hosts, he plays the guitar. He used to have a sweet mullet in 1985. Steve is competent, and that's exactly what women want.
All right.
Wow, the just the pure fact that some of the only evidence that you have is a mullet is very telling.
So on to Darth Calculus. Question for both. What is Steve or Kyle's most embarrassing secret? And I'll ask this about the person you're defending. So James, what is Steve's most embarrassing secret?
I hate to do this to my own man, but I will tell the sad truth. Once Steve, in the past, it happened to be 1985, played a character in an adult film. He was Steve McSex, the pirate. And that's his most embarrassing story. I'm sorry, Steve.
All right. And I'll ask you about Kyle as well. What do you think that Kyle's most embarrassing secret is?
Kyle's most embarrassing secret, I guess it was that one time that he got Steve a role in a pirate porn.
All right. And we're moving on to Brian Stevens' question. Jim's mustache is too distracting, too sexy. Can we please pause the debate for him to shave it and then come back?
Oh, hell no.
Nick J says, question for both. How long do they think that Kyle and Steve have left on Earth? It's a haunting question.
I'm sorry, who's that for?
I think it's for both. I guess we'll have it talk about the people you're defending. How long does Kyle have left on Earth, Jim?
That's.
And is that a flat Earth or a round Earth?
It's not easy to know, but what I will say is that every second on Earth will be a moment of being sexy.
James?
think I remember the question, and I think it was...
How long does Steve have left on Earth?
That's a really spooky question.
I know, it's weird.
Given that he's the embodiment of sex appeal, I would say it's for a very long time.
True sexiness is indeed everlasting. So, Darth, a question for both sides. What is Steve or Kyle wearing right now?
I don't know. Steve is probably wearing some shirt with a hoodie and just looking like like he just crawled out of a box. And Kyle's probably has a very clean haircut, probably a button-up shirt with a jacket on. He's probably got nice lighting and a nice high back chair. Maybe a painting in the background. And Steve probably just has his screen with nothing projected on it.
And James, what is Steve and Kyle wearing right now?
So my guess is Kyle is wearing a Pokemon t-shirt, because compared to Steve, who's a real mature man, Kyle's still a boy. But Steve is probably wearing his typical sexually charged flannel and his overalls. Just the ultimate manly alpha Chad outfit.
And here's a question for both. We'll start with Jim. Just wondering, do any of the debaters have published works on attracting the opposite sex? I don't know if he's looking for advice or looking for credentials, but...
I'm sorry, what was that again?
Do either of the debaters have published works on attracting the opposite sex?
No, I certainly do not.
James, how about yourself?
Steve has... Oh, wait, is it about
the debaters? Do either of the debaters have published works on attracting the opposite sex? Sounds like you might have a secret publication, James.
It's no longer on Amazon Kindle. It is now gone. I'm wondering if somebody actually knew about that. But it wasn't actually just about attracting the opposite sex. It was other stuff.
I did not know this is a thing.
I'll send you a copy.
Excellent. Question for James. Would Steve be sexier as an atheist?
Whoa. If he was no longer an agnostic and if he was an atheist, Steve, it's hard to say. Steve has definitely made a name for himself as the Pope of agnosticism, and he's done it by digging his heels into the ground when he's been ridden hard on that, namely on defining atheism as that there is no God. So I would say I actually think Steve is optimally sexy as the Pope of agnosticism.
And we have a comment from Steve McRae. It was during the debate. He says, "Make it stop. What the hell has my life become?"
Yeah, Steve, I'm sorry, man. I like you, but this is just something that was just I just couldn't pass this up. It was just something that was so obvious. I felt like even you would agree with me. I love you, man.
This is a topic of burning passions, and this debate has been well fought. James, do you want to see us out?
Yes, thank you so much to NonSequitur Show for doing this or I should say this collaboration with us. Happy April Fool's Day, everybody. We have been honored to get to have this debate finally.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun.
I think the part that I honestly like.
Wait, this was an April Fool's joke?
Yeah, it's April Fools.
Oh,
That was why we did it today. But I mean, oh, you were joking. Okay, so the point is, for a second I was like, oh no, I think this came off the wrong way. We're taking the channel in a new direction. The part that made me honestly like die, where I was like, okay, that was like the best off the cuff joke I've ever heard, was when Jim said, I would marry Kyle and go on a long date with Steve in the woods and come back alone. That was just that's like one of the better off the cuff jokes I've ever heard, I think. So really well
we have a
done.
comment in the chat that says this debate proves God exists somehow.
It's been a lot of fun. Thank you for your guys' being here and your patience, and especially Steve and Kyle for being great sports. If you have not subscribed to NonSequitur Show, I highly encourage you to subscribe so you can get updates when they have awesome debates. Because if you love debates here at Modern Day Debate, I can let you know NonSequitur Show they originated it. They were hosting debates long before Modern Day Debate, and they have epic debates with awesome topics and epic people. So with that, thanks again to Ocean for moderating. Totally appreciate it.
Cool.
And to Jim for debating tonight. So with that, keep sifting out the reasonable from the unreasonable. Jim, you had something to say. What were you going to say?
No, I'm good.
Okay, gotcha. Just making sure. And thanks again for everybody being here and for your questions. And with that, have a great